parents for these issues and understand that our parents did the best they could. And we also have to understand that people are always trying to tell us how to parent our kids. So I know when I was growing up, like I know my mom used to say, like, it was said that, like, oh, you should leave your baby cry, like you shouldn't spoil them, like don't run to their every need, just remember those type of things when I go through this. So avoidantly attached people, as children, their parents just weren't there emotionally for them. It doesn't mean that they were bad people. It just means that they they just weren't attuned to their child's needs. Oftentimes, this is because the parents probably had avoidant attachment issues also. So, if they didn't know how to attune to their own emotional needs, therefore they didn't know how to attune to their child's emotional needs. So it's kind of like pull your bootstraps up, like just get on with it, shove your feelings down, whatever. In adults, and I'm giving a lot of backstory here just so that people understand because it is a lot of information. Um, as adults, these people get a really bad rap. These are the typical people want to call them the players. They're not really players. But that's what we want to call them because they're the people who they may seem like they're cool. Like when they first get in a relationship, they're all about you and they want to like be with you, whatever. But as soon as the intimacy threatens their safety, they pull away. They need lots of space. They're very independent. They're very self-reliant. They don't need anybody else. They want to do everything themselves. They do want closeness and they want that in a relationship, but then they also need their space. And the more the intimacy threatens that safety for them, the more they're going to pull away from you. So that's kind of like the basis for, oh, I lost you guys. Hold on a second. That's basically how an avoidant person would show up as an adult. They're just very, like I said, dismissive, avoidant. They push their feelings down. They don't know how to attune to their feelings. Therefore, they don't know how to attune to somebody else's feelings. So then we also have on the other side of the spectrum, we have somebody who is anxiously / preoccupied attachment. And this was me. So as children, these people, their parents, they were basically inconsistent. So one minute they're there, they're showing you love, they're giving you the support that you need. And then the next minute, maybe they're not. Maybe they, maybe you had siblings come along and that took up a lot of their time, or maybe they just had their own emotional needs going on. Oftentimes, these parents also are anxiously attached or codependent. So there's a lot of generational stuff that happens with these people. They can also be parents who are like very fearful in their parenting style. So they don't let you go and explore things on your own because they're afraid that something's going to happen to you. These children, as they become adults, they're the stage 5 clinger. And I know that's like, and they're needy. And I almost hate to say those words because it sounds like so bad, but it is true. They need lots of validation. They need lots of closeness. They need lots of affirmations. Like words of affirmation is probably a lot of our love languages. When you get into that, it's like you just need to know that you matter, because the underlying problem with these people are they don't feel loved and they don't feel worthy with any insecure attachment. Really, that is the bottom line, but they just go about it in different ways. So these people, they just want to be close to you. They want to know that you love them. They want to know, that they matter. They, if you don't get a text message in 2 hours, you're wondering why, what happened. Inconsistency can throw these people into a tailspin, because any inconsistency, they feel like you're going to go away because that's what they learn as children. Like they learn that sometimes it's there and sometimes it's not. And so they grow up not trusting people. There's also a fourth type, and it's called fearful avoidant. And these people are, this is like the mix of both of them. And I'm honestly not going to talk about it a lot. If anybody has any insight, they're more than welcome to talk about it. I don't know if like you guys do, but there's not a lot of studies on it. It's about 5% of the population. It stems from usually families that basically when they were children, their caregivers were a source of support and love, but they were also afraid of them because they may have outbursts, abusive childhoods, things like that. There's just not a lot of studies about it. I don't feel comfortable talking about it because there's just not a lot out there that I've read anyway. So, and the reason this is important, people are probably wondering, like, why is this even important, Chrissy? Because, and as adults, the anxiously attached people and the avoidantly attached people tend to attract each other. This is where you get that whole like, okay, I'm constantly dating the same type of people. So if you're somebody who's like, oh my gosh, every girlfriend or every boyfriend I've had has been like crazy person and they're hi. And I'm just waving at whoever just
I'm like, hi Deborah. Hi Beer.
so
carry on.
yeah. So these people, so they tend to attract each other. So like you're like, oh my gosh, every girlfriend I've dated has been a crazy person and crazy jealous and all of these things. And then like the girls, not just girls, because it can be any gender really. But I think in society, men are taught to shove things down more. So and then the girl, like I know for me, like I was dating the same type of person who would like be all about me at first, and then like they would just go away from me. And it's oftentimes because these two people are so attracted to each other. And there's a lot of theories, but some of it is like because you're affirming like what your belief is, like the anxiously attached person is affirming the belief that everybody's going to leave, so like they're attracted to the avoidant people and whatever. One of the big theories that I've done a lot of research on and like just read a lot about is that it's because you each have what the other person wishes they had. So for the anxiously attached person, you look at that avoidant person and you think like, oh, you're okay, I'm not okay. So therefore I'm going to go with you because you can make me okay, type of thing, if that makes sense to everybody. Like, so you're just, and they're very independent, they're very self-reliant, and the anxiously attached person wishes they had that. So they date that avoidant person, hoping that that will like somehow, I guess, transpire to them, whatever. And then the avoidant person, they tend to go for the anxiously attached person because the anxiously attached person, they are very attuned to their needs. They're very emotional. They know how to show love. They know how to give love, all of those things. So the avoidant person, deep down, they want to be able to do those things too, even though they don't know how. So they look at the anxiously attached person like, oh, that's the traits that I wish I had. And this is on a subconscious level. So it's not something that's really that we're conscious of that we're doing, and so that but the problem is with the anxiously attached person is they don't understand how to they don't understand what they want in life. Like they don't understand their own needs because they're always focused on everybody else. And so these two people attract each other and it's this constant push and pull. So, the avoidant person is pulling away because they need space. And the anxiously attached person, especially if it's like inconsistency, is then grappling for that other person, like, oh no, come back to me, come back to me. And there's this constant push and pull, and it just spirals out of control. And so I just wanted to kind of explain the basis for attachment theory in this first little segment here, because I think that, and from what I've read and from what I've studied, this is the key to why we date the same kind of people and why we find ourselves in these toxic relationships. Because if you're not aware of this stuff, then you don't know how to fit. There's hope. Like this is a spectrum. So like we can change, we can get earned secure attachment, we can get all these things, but it's going to take work. And so that's what I hope to help people do. That is my whole basis for everything is to help these people get to a point of having earned secure attachment. I'm still a work in progress myself, but I've definitely come a long way in being able to do this. So yeah, so I feel like I've been talking for a while, but that's I just wanted to give you guys the basis for that. When I come back, I'll give you some tips of how to maybe better work on this with yourself and within your partner, because there is a lot of ways that you can actually work on this together. Even if you are somebody who's with like an avoidant and you're anxious, or vice versa. And there's some tips that I can give you when I come back around. So, but I'll turn this over right now and let somebody else have the mic.
Yeah, I think Vicky is muted, so I'll speak unless you want to, Vicky.
No, you go, Laura, and then I'll add my.
I will do that. Just a reminder, Deborah, we do about 45 minutes of talking, and Abir, I think you logged on a little late. We chat and then we open up for Q&A. So if you want to contribute anything to the topic, we really appreciate that. If you have any questions, it's a good time for questions. You can also use the written chat if you don't want to come on camera. That's perfectly fine. I like that they can kind of organize some of the chaos that we go through our developmental stages.
Yeah.
And try to say, okay, you kind of fit here, but so this is something you can focus on. But I also know that everything is almost like a spectrum, right? So you can have this and this and then be somewhere, but it's really nice that you can have a place to start. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about my story, because I grew up without a father. My mother was very busy and she had her own challenges with men. So I was never really given like a good example of what a healthy relationship even is. I just saw her in abusive relationships. I saw her get, assaulted as a child. I saw the guys that my older sister dated. And it was all very like unhealthy. And I was like, I'm never going to be like them. I'm never going to get married. I'm never going to do what they're doing. And so, funny enough, I was unaware, but I was still doing it. I was just not marrying the people, right? So my first long-term relationship, I had justified because I was a single mom and I didn't want anything long-term. It was just a relationship on the side that like really helped me. It was like my drinking buddy and my, my party friend, and like this alter ego of myself that I got to hang out with on the weekend and drink and have fun, and all of the teenage years and 20-year-old stuff that I didn't get to do because I had a daughter at 19 years old. So anyways, I was in this long-term relationship for 8 years, and I didn't realize that he had commitment issues, and I didn't realize that he didn't communicate with himself very well. And I'll talk a little bit about that. But anyways, after that relationship ended, I ended up getting into another relationship that was 5 years long, and it was a little bit worse issues. And then I got into another relationship that was less than a year. So of these people that were in the same body, essentially, they just kept getting worse and worse and worse in behaviors, right? And so I really understood that if I didn't change something about myself, it was going to get even worse after that. I was like, I can't handle that. There's something here that I need to really look at. So before, I was just looking at myself when that first long 8-year relationship ended, realizing that since he had commitment issues, I took a lot of that personally. I was like, I'm not good enough for you. There's something unlovable about me. You can come over whenever you want. And even if it was like I had to reschedule with my friends or something, I didn't have the boundaries that I needed and should have had in order to even have a healthy relationship. So I was loving, I was helpful, I was lenient, I was tolerant, I was shy, but I would have done anything to have a healthy relationship with a man, which is really weird because when I looked back, I was like, I don't do this kind of stuff for friendships. Why am I doing this type of behavior for like a male companion who you need to have a really solid friendship with first, right? before you even go into the romantic
Mhm.
stuff. You got to make sure you know each other. And so I was like, why am I doing this? So I just remembered telling myself, like, I need to be able to do what I do with a friend type of relationship in my romantic relationship, so that I can not feel that longing and that wanting and that hole that I'm literally plugging that person into inside of me. And I think that's one of the reasons why it becomes toxic, is because one person is so needy, like you said, Chrissy,
Yeah.
and the other person is kind of avoidant.
Mhm.
Um, and so looking at the guys that I dated, and luckily I'm in a really healthy relationship now, and it did take work because we all have to go through healing. We all go through
Mhm.
like this personal development and how to bond together and grow together and make sure you're growing together. So that's a different subject. But I realized, like, the toxic relationships I was in, I didn't, again, I didn't have boundaries and they didn't respect boundaries. So there was like I want to say an elimination of boundaries, but like they never existed. So, but my self worth would be attacked because the kind of person that wants to keep you around knows also how to pull those strings within you to keep you there. So if it's like, let me attack their self worth, let me criticize them. That's where verbal abuse comes in. Manipulative behaviors is because people don't learn how to cope and actually function like a mature adult sometimes. So they learn a manipulation that works, and then that's just their mode of operation. Um, Fear of commitment, I've already said that, but mainly it's well, in addition to, I can't say mainly, but there's like this lack of internal and external communication. I think, Chrissy, you mentioned that, but when we communicate, the way that we communicate with other people is the same way we communicate with ourselves. And I realized that I wasn't communicating with myself at all. So I couldn't be communicating well with other people as to what my needs were, what my wants were, what my desires were. So, and the other person wasn't either. So we're in this like almost mute relationship about our emotions because nobody knows how to communicate with ourselves or each other. And so it's like, how can you grow that way? And then there's that conflict, that fear of conflict. And the toxic relationships, what I noticed is that someone will have a fear of conflict, and that's because it stirs up all of these emotions that somebody doesn't know how to deal with.
Mhm.
And what I've learned in a healthy relationship is actually that conflict and those emotions and those struggles that actually grow and deepen the relationship. So when you don't take crap from somebody and you're like, no, we're going to talk about this, we're going to get to the bottom of it, and we're going to get through it. And your partner is actually respectful of that and says, okay, let's fight about this. That is how you grow. But I had learned early on that conflict was a no, right? So there's a lot of behaviors and stuff that go into the toxic type of relationships, but you can really feel it, and when we can be honest with ourselves and say, this relationship does not feel good. I don't feel good in this relationship. And we can actually start to realize how much we do deserve the love that we do deserve, no matter what that other person says. You can begin to take the steps to better yourself. And I can go on and on about that, but the relationship was ripped away from me. Actually, like the universe was just like, you're done, and like you can't tolerate this anymore. So it was a good thing because like my psyche and my spirit wouldn't let me stay. But not all of us are that lucky to go through that severe pain and
Yeah.
anguish. Some of us like actually stay, and then 15-20 years comes, and then you're like, I'm still in this, what do I do now? I've given my life to a person. How do I get out of it? What do I do? So yeah, that's just some of the things that came to mind while you were talking, Chrissy. So I'll hand it over to Vicky.
Well, Laura, I always say that you basically tell my story, so I don't know what I can add to it.
Your words.
I swear to God, as Laura was talking, I'm like, yep, that's exactly what I've been through. So not to rehash a lot of the same themes. But my story is very similar to Laura's. I grew up in a very unhealthy relationship. My parents got divorced. It was a really nasty divorce. I never really had an example of a healthy relationship. Like, I didn't know what that was. But the thing is that I didn't know that I didn't know what that. Like, I don't know if that makes
Mm.
sense, but
Mhm.
like, I didn't even realize that I never had an example of a healthy relationship in front of me. Like, I just thought that this is how it is, right? Because I think that toxicity normalizes itself when you don't have an example of something else, right? Like, how do you know what you want until you've experienced what you don't want, right? So that was me. Like, I didn't know. But much like Laura, I very much grew up believing that I was never going to get married. I never I never had any desire to get married. I also had a huge desire. It's interesting the way that, I don't know, I think Laura, you also overcompensated on the independence
Mm.
part of you, right? Like, so I really overcompensated for any lag through financial security. So like, I went to school, I made sure I did really well in my career. I made sure that I like set myself up for financial independence, because I wanted to be everything that was the antithesis of what I observed in my home, right? So like, my mom couldn't make a lot of money, so I made sure I would make a lot of money. I would make sure that I invested early and often, right? I married somebody who's a complete opposite of my father. But interestingly enough, I also had this I haven't had that many relationships in full transparency, right? But the few that I did have, I genuinely believed that they would, not that they would leave me, as in, I just didn't believe that relationships lasted. So when the relationship would begin, I was already thinking about what it would be like when it ended. Like, I was always thinking about how something would end. I never really saw a relationship as something that was everlasting. I always saw it as something that was very finite. Then the other thing that was also really interesting with my journey is that I I was avoidant attachment style, as in like, I couldn't even pronounce the words "I love you" to somebody that I was in a relationship with. Those words were the hardest words for me to pronounce to somebody. They were really, really hard for me. Um, and that's because I just never really trusted anybody. I never trusted to give my heart away. And yet, I think what I wanted the most was to find somebody that I would want to give my heart away to, you know? Um, so, but interestingly enough, I was also, I think, anxious attached too, because I wanted that love more than anything in this world. But I had such a hard time articulating that or getting in touch with myself to even be willing to say that it is something that I wanted, just because of all the toxicity that I had experienced as a child. And so my journey was one of inner introspection, and really asking myself, like, who am I? What do I want in life? And I never really thought I wanted love in my life. And then what I realized was it was something that I wanted more than anything in this world. And that was a really hard truth to look at, because, I would think back to all of my experiences and the way that I would avoid anybody that ever had any feelings for me. So, um, I don't know. It's just weird. I don't know if I'm really explaining it, but I think if you're somebody who went through it, you will understand it. Um, so yeah, so that was my journey. And I'll share a little more in terms of, how I was able to at least start to see myself and to see my wounds. I think, one of the biggest ahas for me was that I didn't even know that the wounds were there. I didn't even know. And I didn't know until I was cracked open and I had to look at them. So I'll leave it at that and I turn it over to you, my friend. Chrissy.
That was awesome. And there's a lot to unpack with all of that. But I'm so glad that you told that story. And I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a therapist, I can't diagnose, but what you just described, Vicky, is somebody who is fearful avoidant. From what I've read, there's not a lot of research on it because from what I understand, again, there's not a lot of research. I'm not a therapist, don't claim to be, but I have studied the stuff. And they say, I actually am listening to a podcast right now from a woman who says that she is fearful avoidant. And they talk a lot about that. So like you have the anxious part, like you want the love, but then you're so afraid of it, you push it away. And so I'm actually really glad you told that story because that, and I don't know if you were fearful avoidant or not, but what you described is people who are fearful avoidant will describe. So that's like
Are
that.
you saying I'm in the 5%? That's what's been going on? I thought I was like fearful and anxious, and then I became secure.
Well, you probably are secure now. Like I mean, I think you told me you took a quiz and that's the thing about these attachment things. Okay. So like, it is very much on a spectrum. So like, you're not always going to be anxious. You're not always going to be avoidant. I mean, I've always been pretty much anxious, but it's because of the people I've dated. Like I have similar stories other than the fact that my parents were together till I was 18 and they loved each other. But my mom was very much codependent. She was very much meeting all of my dad's needs. You know what I mean? And he was very much, he was inconsistent because he worked a lot. So it was like very much like he would be like, oh, we're going to go do this. And then that time would come and we wouldn't go. And it was always a letdown. So, and I've just dated, like I got my first serious boyfriend at 16 and he was abusive and a drug dealer and all of these things. And so that led me more on the anxious spectrum. And then I got another boyfriend later on and he was very avoidant and I became very codependent and was with a lot of addicts and different things like that. So I have been very anxious, but I've also not too long ago actually had a guy that was like talking to me and I cut it off very quickly because I could tell that he was on that. Like I became very avoidant with him because he was very needy and I could tell he was on that anxious spectrum. So then I was like, oh, whoa, this is too much. So it's a spectrum is my point. This is a spectrum. It's not like you're always going to be one or the other. You can very much have all of it wrapped up into one, depending on who you're with. So you may be a little bit avoidant or a little bit anxious from a childhood, but then depending on who you're dating throughout your life and what they're showing you, I've dated a lot of men who were just not always the greatest guys. And I had this like save them mentality. That's the codependency, like we want to save them. And I'm like, oh yeah, like he was addicted to drugs 3 months ago, but he's got a really good heart and he's clean now for like a month. And then, I'm not saying anything about addicts. I'm just saying like it is a lifelong battle with them. And so I've dated a lot of that. And so, so definitely there is a spectrum, but what you did describe, Vicky, is somebody who would talk about being fearful avoidant because it's like you want that love, but then, it gets too close and you're like, oh, for me, I always wanted the love. I like my dream when I was a child was just to grow up and get married. And like, I didn't even think about like, that's what I wanted. And I literally, as an anxiously attached person, I did not know what my needs were until this past year, because that's something we struggle with. And I started doing work. I started like coaching programs and I was doing work and there was like sheets we had to fill out like, oh, what is your value system? And what is this? And like, I remember I stared at that sheet about values and I stared at it for the longest time and I just cried because I was like, I don't know. I don't know what my values are. I don't know what my needs are. I had no clue because when you are somebody who's anxiously attached, you just don't know. You don't know what your needs are. And so moving on from all of that though, and it's really hard for me to talk from an avoidant standpoint, but I did have a conversation yesterday with an ex of mine, which was a very, very enlightening conversation. And he is on the avoidant spectrum, but he's also done a lot of work. I don't know if he really knew he was that, but he had done a lot of work on himself like over the years. So he had gotten to a point now, I think, where he's like not like, because you have like, again, it's a spectrum. So you have like, you could be very farly avoidant, you could be kind of in the middle, whatever. And so we talked a lot about things, and like he told me, one of the things that he told me was, when he would get off of work, he would need to like just have like a moment to like reboot himself. Like he would need to come home, and he would, and we didn't live close. So a lot of times, like I would be at his house when he would get off of work, and he would get off of work, and it had been like a while since we would see each other. So I would want to be like, oh, like, baby, how's it going? Whatever, like, all wanting to be with him. And he, what he was happy I was there, but he just needed like an hour to reboot. And here I was. And it wasn't that he didn't want me there, but he just needed to like get a drink, and not alcohol, but like a pop or whatever, and like sit down and watch TV, where I'm like wanting to talk, and I'm like wanting to be close with him. And so we had this conversation yesterday, and I think that's where the balance comes in, and that's where communication comes in. And these two people don't know how to communicate very well, like at all. Like, for an anxiously attached person, you tend to be more passive aggressive because you're afraid that if you voice your needs, then those people are going to leave you. So you don't want to like say what exactly you want. And you expect them to kind of like read your mind in a way, or just read your mannerisms, because you can't, like I can, like I'm very intuitive, and I can like tell how somebody's acting, and I can like kind of read that, but an avoidant person can't. They're not attuned to it. So that they really need you to be clear. Like they need you to say, like, this is what I need from you in this moment. And that is what an avoidantly attached person needs from anybody, is they need you to be clear. They need to have a little bit of space. And so for an anxiously attached person, some of the ways that you can really deal and figure out your needs is, first of all, you have to learn how to self-soothe, because self-soothing is something you're not taught as a child. So you want to soothe within the relationship. The avoidant person wants to soothe outside of the relationship, and there has to be a compromise. And the anxiously attached person has to learn how to self-soothe. And that can be meditation, walking in nature, journaling, going for a walk, playing with your dog, anything that's going to help you take some deep breaths, anything that's going to help you like kind of calm down when that gets activated within you. So you really need to learn how to do that stuff. And like, if you're being triggered by your partner, regardless of what attachment style they are, you need to figure out a way of like self-soothing yourself before you bring it to that person. Because if you bring it to them when you're activated, it's not going to go over well, because you're not going to communicate well, and they're not going to understand what you're even trying to say. So, and then you need to kind of go within yourself and say to yourself, okay, I'm being triggered right now. Like, check in emotionally. Like, why am I being triggered? Is this an insecurity that I just need to deal with? Or is there really something here that we need to have a discussion about? Ask yourself that, check in with yourself, write it down, get yourself in a better place. And then if it is something that you feel you need to have a conversation about, then you can go to your partner and say, hey, I would like to talk with you about something. Like, this is something that was really bothering me. And it's really important to say, I feel this way, because if you just come to your partner and say like, you did this and it upset me, you're attacking them. So you need to kind of say like, I feel in this moment, this is how I felt with you as a person. So that's like the anxiously attached person. For the avoidant person, I think they just need to like, again, you have to become aware of this stuff to even work on it, first of all. Because, and for the anxiously attached person, like, they're usually really happy to hear about this stuff, because they're like, oh yeah, like I remember for me, it was just like a weight was lifted from me, because I was like, okay, I'm not alone. There's a name for this. For the avoidantly attached person, it's a little harder because they don't think there's a problem. They think they're okay. They think everything is fine. They're okay, but they're really not. Like neither of these people are really completely okay, but they can be, and they can work on it. And so for the avoidantly attached person, they also need to understand, like, if they're with somebody that's anxiously attached, like, the consistency is key. And I use this example a lot with people, because I've had a lot of this where you get with somebody at the beginning of a relationship and they're texting you all the time. Like they're texting you every morning. Hey, beautiful. I hope you have a great day, whatever. A month goes by and all of a sudden you don't get that text that morning. And you might let it go and you may, okay, well, maybe they're sleeping. You let it go for a couple hours. They still haven't texted you. For the anxiously attached person, that is going to throw you into major activation mode because it's not consistent. They've been texting you every morning for an entire month and now they haven't. And they're awake because they've been on Facebook or whatever. They're awake and they still haven't texted you. And so, for the avoidantly attached person, if you're with somebody who's anxious, I would just caution you to be very consistent. If you're going to send text messages like that, like do it on a consistent basis. Like I would just caution you, it's going to help a lot of things along the way. It's all about compromising, and it's all about working together, and it's all about being able to communicate your needs. You have to be able to talk to each other and say what you need out of the relationship. If you need space, you need to communicate that and tell your partner why. Like tell them, like, I'm just going through a lot of shit right now in my head. And this is why. And maybe I can't talk about it right in this moment, but give me like a day or so and we will talk and I'll tell you what's going on. But it has nothing to do with you. Like making sure they know it's not anything to do with you. It's just me, and then the anxiously attached person has to learn how to self-soothe and be like, okay, like I'm just going to give him a little bit of space and we'll come back together and we'll talk about it. So, that's all I have for right there. It's there's a lot. I'm like throwing so much information out here, but it's people think that people are like, oh, it's just a relationship, or it's just, it's just a breakup, whatever. But like you don't, like, if you're somebody struggling with anxious attachment issues, it is like your whole world is falling apart. Every breakup. It's like that whole, like, you just feel like you're not worth anything anymore and you're not worthy and nobody loves you and you're never going to find love. And, it's rough. It's rough out there. So, but I will turn it over to Laura now.
Thank you, Chrissy. Yes, that's all good information. I was just thinking about how relationships really do teach us about ourselves, and I have a firm belief that we get into relationships because the dynamic is so magnetic that it is meant to serve us in a positive way, even if it's toxic, even if it's negative. It's all developmental for our growth, as a spirit having a human experience, or just as a human being, or whatever you believe. Every time we leave a relationship, if we use it in the right way, we can actually grow from it and learn from it. But another thing that came to mind is that every time, like, I wasn't always codependent, but like my mom was, but there was something in me that was triggered after my first relationship that said, okay, I just need to settle down. I want to be in this relationship. I don't want to date anymore. I'm almost 30 years old. This was years ago, because I'm much older now. That I said, I'm just going to make this work. I'm just going to do it, whatever I can to make this work, even though it was not a good relationship for me. And I didn't listen to myself. And then I became codependent in that relationship. And it actually got worse and worse and worse towards the end, because I was so stuck on like making it work. And at the end, I was like, I'm just going to make it work. And then not realizing that I can't even change the person. But yeah, you try, right? You try to change them, you try to make them fit. And then I'm like, that's crazy that I would actually think that that would work, because I have no real, like, the changes with us, right? We have to change ourselves in order to actually make any difference. But I realized that a lot of us, especially when we have like like Vicky, we were talking about how we were independent. We had to be over independent and we had to make things work for ourselves or, work for us. Sometimes something's really easy to change in the external. But when we try to apply that to like people, we're like, oh, well, we can't change a person. But what I noticed is it's so much easier to try to change someone else than to change myself. I kept finding myself in that same position where I'm like, oh, this is a me thing. I need to change me. So that was interesting because every relationship that I got into, I don't want to say, I don't really like the word disorders, but I want to say that my spectrum shifted, like maybe I was anxious and then all of a sudden I turned into fearful, and it would like, there was like a dominant, prominent, like, for sure. I was anxious. And then all of a sudden I was like, I'm not going to have any relationships. I'm just done. I'm just good. And then when the right relationship came along, I just pushed it away and kept it at bay. Funny though, because I had listed like all the things that I wanted or no, that I didn't want from a person. And I realized that I just had a severe fear of men for some reason, because I was describing like an actual man. I was like, this isn't going to work out because, like everything on here is like I'm looking at it through the lens of fear,
Yeah.
And when I went to try to like gain, like, I didn't even like you, Vicky, I didn't even know what a healthy relationship was. And I was learning manifesting at the time. So they're like, well, just imagine the life you want. Just imagine the relationship you want. I was like, I literally have no idea. Like, what does that even look like? I can't even conjure up something in my imagination that I can't, like, I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
and then that's where people get like that whole fairy tale image in their head from movies, because like that's the only thing they can compare it to. Right. So I remember I had just said, okay, these are my top 3 qualities that are like absolutely required. And communication was one of them. Honesty was one of them. And I can't remember the third one, but those 2 were so important to me, that I pushed that. So I pushed communication. But the other thing that I want to mention is that when Robert and I first got together, what we did is we took pictures of us, of kids, of like, I was like 4 and he was like 4, 3, like pictures of us, like childhood pictures. And we put them on the fridge and we said, anytime that we're having a really hard challenge, it's that kid that is speaking right now. And that helped us understand that we're helping each other heal our traumas.
Mhm.
But we had to be really honest with ourselves. We had to be honest with each other. We had to talk about our stories, that we even are aware of. And we just had to make a commitment to say, this is 5-year-old Laura talking right now, or this is little Robert, because so much of that pain is from, it's just experiences that we had, when we were younger, like when people leave or die, like the child doesn't understand that, especially if there was nobody to soothe them. Like you said, Chrissy, like when somebody just disappears from your life and there's nobody there to soothe you and comfort you as a child, because like in my family, they were too busy working to make ends meet. So we had food. It's like,
Ah.
yeah. And you don't even meet that part of yourself until you're an adult. And one of the terms that I really liked was reparenting yourself. I had to reparent myself. Like I had to say, because I was very independent. I was very like fend for myself, but I realized that wasn't going to work in a relationship where Robert had certain needs to want to provide for us as a family. I'm like, no, I'm going to do it all. Because I'm used to being head of the household. I was like, oh, okay. So there's all of this stuff going on at once in order to like really make sure that I'm feeding that part of the man that he is and what he needs to make himself feel like he's doing his best, and vice versa. So anyways, so yeah, I really do recommend anybody who's going through any type of pattern to write down your 3 top qualities that you're just like, these are things that I absolutely want in a relationship. And whether you have them right now or not doesn't matter. But if honesty is really important to you, make it non-negotiable. And if communication is important to you, again, make it non-negotiable, because that will help you start to understand the relationship that you actually want if you can't imagine it. And I knew because I'm a teacher, I knew that I wanted someone who's growth oriented, always evolving, probably would be a teacher mentality, someone who loves to teach and loves to be a part of something. And that's who I ended up meeting. So, but that came after a lot of healing, and that's
You
actually
manifested
going.
him, right? You
Yeah,
manifested him. Like you manifested your perfect partner there.
yeah, I did, and it was a long, strange story, because for like 5 years, I was telling Vicky this the other day, for like 5 years, my boss was telling me, you need to go join. I met him at the martial arts school. She's like, you need to go do martial arts. My boss was doing martial arts. She's like, it's right down the street. You just need to go. You need to go meet, Master Jones is what we call him in the schools. You need to go try it out. You need to go do it. And I was like, whatever. So the interesting thing about that is Robert was married previously, so he was probably married at the time. So like the whole divine timing of the thing, and me having to hit rock bottom and say, okay, I need to do something physical with my body, because actually the whole reason why I even joined martial arts was because I did a lot of backpacking all summer long. But in Seattle, the weather gets really crappy. So I was like, I need something in off season. I need something when it's winter and cold and I can't backpack and our days are like over at 3 p.m. It's just dark. So that's why I started in October. And then it was the real beginning of my healing journey. And it was the real, I was a student for a couple of years, and then it was like the real start to a friendship. And then, after that, it's just, I don't know what happened. It's just like this. We ran, we got back together. There's all this attachment, all this crap going on. And then eventually we're like, you know what, we're going to make this work. And we understand each other, but it really did take like that. I wanted to work with this person, not thinking that I can change him, accepting him for who he is, acknowledging all of our trauma from the past, taking advantage of things to bicker over, because that does help us grow closer together. And then always making sure that we're growing closer together, because some people will grow further apart, and you will feel that distance. So we're always just making sure that any challenges are like our relationship is priority. And any challenges that we have need to be nourishing our relationship and not putting a wedge in between us and, resentment and all that stuff. Like, he's so sensitive to energy and so am I, that like we can't even tolerate any negative feelings like that between us for a second. So it's like, let's fix this, because our relationship is so important. So it's worth it. I just want to say it's worth it when you find your person. And again, I was like, Vicky, I never thought I would find my person. I never did, or I never thought I would. I was just like, whatever, that if that person exists, whatever. But it's worth it because they do help you grow, and they do help you transform, and they do help you meet parts of yourself that you didn't know existed. And you do get to nurture each other and learn compassion and understanding and all those great things. But when we don't heal the parts of ourselves, maybe you guys can talk a little bit about healing those parts of ourselves. What are the things that we can do to like heal those parts of ourselves? I can tell you what I did. I'd have to think about it maybe. But yeah, but I think to get people to where they want to be, they need to just take the challenges that the relationship is teaching them, and then take the jump, right, to want something better and different. And then heal that part of themselves, because it is like a like attracts like in physics, right? Like always attracts like. So it might not be like identical traumas, but that's that magnetic resonating, that it's not even opposites attract. It's just that like attracts like. So if there's pain in one person, there's pain in another. When you heal that pain, you end up manifesting and attracting a more healed version of a person for you.
Exactly.
So yeah, I'll go ahead and hand it over from there.
Yeah, no, I love the conversation today. Speaking of healing, one of the biggest things that I came to realize is that there was wounding, right, from my childhood that I didn't know was there. And as part of that, I needed to forgive. That was kind of the beginning of my journey. And the forgiveness had to go multiple ways. I had to forgive my father, because I genuinely felt like the way he behaved was unforgivable. And I think that and I've been at this for a couple of years, and I'm finally getting to a place of peace where I can finally forgive and release him. I saw a photo of him a couple of days ago. My mom sent it to me. And I don't know why, but it used to infuriate me. I couldn't understand why she loved him. So, from a child's point of view, you just can't accept it, because I see it so differently, but she sees it so differently too, because there were happy moments and there were happy years, right? I only remember the bad years because that's when my consciousness was already that's when my memories were forming, right? So, but she remembers the good times. I only remember the bad times and the aftermath of it all. But I think the healing does genuinely start with forgiveness. And it's forgiveness of whoever it is that, you feel was a part of that wounding story in you, in your life. It starts with forgiveness of yourself. Because the more that you're on this journey, the more you're like, God, I wish I had made different choices. I wish I had made different decisions. And if that guilt and shame comes in, and I think it's very normal and natural for that to happen. Regret, so much regret. If that comes up, forgive yourself for it. Forgive yourself for it. And recognize that these are patterns and that these are gifts. And that these are gifts that are helping shine a light on the things that you need to heal and that you need to become aware of. So that has been a huge part of my healing journey, is forgiving myself, giving myself grace, letting go of any regret. Maybe, regret of people that you had let go because you were afraid, right? Because love is a two-way street. And what I mean by that is when love is given to you, you have to be able to receive it.
No.
And when you're avoidant and you're fearful, you can't receive it. You just can't, right? So, and that's okay. There's beauty in that lesson too. And look at everything as a gift, genuinely, and every relationship in your life is, I like how Gabby says it. She says every relationship is a spiritual assignment. So
I always say, yeah.
I look at every single relationship in my life, whether it's with my mom, with my sister. I even had a coworker, I'll share a coworker situation where, she was very demeaning towards me, very demeaning. And it triggered the hell out of me. And I had to recognize that it was triggering a very sensitive and a very tender part of me. And I needed to shine a light on why that was so triggering to me. And after, introspection, whether it's meditation, but really just at least shining a light on it and placing awareness on it, I actually recognized the beauty and the lesson in it. And it was fascinating because 3 months later, I went into a conversation with her and I went in with a completely different energy. And that dynamic completely changed too. Maybe it's not that she had changed, it's that I had changed, right? And it's like Laura talked about, it's the change within you. And so whatever triggers come up, recognize that A, there are patterns, B, place awareness on them. I think mindfulness is such an important aspect of being able to get through this healing. As you place awareness on it, cry. I think that release is so incredibly important. I used to, when I was in a much more controlling energy and when I was in a much more independent energy, I used to feel like tears were for sissies. Like, girls don't cry. What's that movie? Real girls don't cry, whatever, right? Or real boys don't cry. But like, I genuinely was of that philosophy, right? And when I was cracked open, I recognized that tears were quite healing, and it's okay. And when you recognize and you feel the pattern, I know I feel it, in my throat and my chest. That's where the pain comes up. But place awareness in your body of where the pain is, because the pain is absolutely stored in your body somewhere. You just have to become aware of it. And when you feel it, allow it to release, whether it's through sweat, whether it's through tears, whatever that release is for you, allow it to come out. And the interesting thing about placing awareness on the pain is that it's by shining a light on it is how you're able to heal it. And so I've had to do a lot of very vulnerable and honest introspection, which for someone like me was extremely hard because all I ever did was avoided everything and masked it with, it's all perfect. Everything is perfect on the outside. As long as everything is perfect on the outside, everything is perfect on the inside, right? So for someone who is that avoidant and really tries to mask their feelings and emotions, it's okay. It's okay to look at yourself and to be your authentic and honest self with yourself, nobody else, just at least with yourself. Be honest with yourself. Place awareness on the fears, place awareness on the hurt, recognize the hurt, feel the hurt, and release the hurt. And you're just going to be so at peace. And it's wonderful and it's beautiful. And that kind of has been my, my healing journey. And I still go through it, but there's less and less of it now. I'm just kind of like more at ease and more at peace with it. And I'm kind of like at a point where I don't even try to change anybody. I don't try to change any relationships. I don't try to change anything. I just allow it to be. And when a trigger comes up, I'm like, oh, there's a trigger. There's a pattern. What's it telling me? Of course I cry and I get through it. So I turn it over to you, Chrissy.
Okay. So much to unpack. I love this conversation too. And sitting here listening to you guys, I gotta be honest, I'm a little envious when you guys talk about being so independent because I never had that. But then again, I also had parents, and it is multi-generational. I had parents who we all lived in a very small town, very close, like literally around the corner from each other. Even as I got older and had my children, I was an only child. I had to move in the last couple of years. I had to move a half an hour away to finally just get, not that like they were doing it on purpose, but just like wanting to keep you sheltered still. I had to move a half an hour away to finally, I think it was another part of the universe, like directing me here to like, not only throw me by myself to heal, but to like give me the independence that I was wanting. My cousin from my aunt, again, multi-generational, like he freaking moved states. You know what I mean? Like it was the same situation for him. And like, he finally like met a woman and was getting married and still wasn't able to kind of gain that independence from his mom because she was still like, you know what I mean, like overbearing. And he actually freaking moved, he's back now, but like actually had to move states. So it's just it's a multi-generational thing. I think when that happens, I think especially when you're I don't know, I have multiple children, so I'm like, yeah, you guys do whatever, but like I think when you have an only child, maybe it is different. Maybe it's like you're, you know what I mean, you want to like keep them close and you want to keep them, you know, sheltered, I guess. But you know, if it wasn't them, it was like men. And so I don't know, I listen to you guys, I'm like, I wish I mean, I'm gaining it now, but you know what I mean? Like I had to move to get that. As far as Laura, you asked us about healing parts of ourselves. I think the reparenting is definitely good there. I think the reparenting, I'm still learning. And I think for somebody who's trying to heal any type of attachment issues or relationship wounding or anything like that, there's different theories out there. Some people say you have to heal it with other people. I don't believe that personally, especially if you're trying to gain independence and determine your needs. For me, I had to stop dating. Like I had to take a step back and just determine what I needed and what I wanted, and like not one, but what I need out of relationships and who I am and what my values are. Like I had to basically reparent myself. I had to determine all of these things about myself. And then me and Vicky talked yesterday, and she's like, you know, like I wouldn't close it off. Like maybe dip your toe back into dating. And I think like I'm not closing it off. And so if that happens, like I'm ready to maybe dip my toe back in, because I feel like I have to see like what else I need to work on, to see like where I'm at in life and like how that all is playing out for me. But I do think that you know, if you're in a relationship, you're gonna have to work on it together. But if you're single and you're hearing this stuff, or if you're just dating casually and you're hearing this stuff and you're like, oh my gosh, that's me, I have one of these attachment issues, I do stress that maybe you don't have to like stop dating or completely close yourself off, but maybe just making sure you're taking time and space to check in with yourself, you know, in the evening, in the mornings, throughout the day, and making sure that you're determining what your needs and what your wants are. And if you are somebody with anxious attachment, it is important to really have some time alone to do that, because if you don't, you won't figure it out, because you're constantly trying to make those other people happy. So, I was like, I was about to ask if anybody had any questions.
I'm trying to moderate for us. Yes. No,
Yeah, I didn't know if
that.
like I didn't know on YouTube if anybody was like, I haven't been on YouTube, so.
Yeah, nope, nothing on YouTube right
Okay.
now.
Okay.
But yes, so I'm putting it in here. Yeah, no, I love this conversation. And I guess like the one thing that I would say, Chrissy, for you is write out your non-negotiables. Maybe
I've done that. Yeah. I
right?
have it.
Before you even dip your toes back in, right?
Yeah,
Like, write
I've
out
done
your
that.
non-negotiables.
Yeah, you have
So
to. I did that a long time ago. It's right down on paper. I have so many notes everywhere, but I did. That was, and actually, Laura, you brought that up earlier too, and it was one of the things I was going to tell people. Especially again, if you're somebody with anxious attachment, writing down like, and I'm not a big list type of person, but I would say you need to write down on a list like what your values are, and not even just relationships, but just in general. You need to write down what your non-negotiables are, your needs, your values, all of that stuff. And then look at that. And like when you start to date somebody, another thing you need to do also, if you go to start dating people, is you need to like think as you're dating that person, like pay attention to them, but also be thinking to yourself, like, how do I feel in this moment? How do I feel with this person? How do they make me feel? Like, what do they have that I like? Because so many times we go out on dates and we're just so focused on getting them to like us, like we don't care about how it's really making us feel. And so you get like, I've gotten relationships and situationships where it's like it's literally like we have nothing in common. I'm like, I don't even know why I like dated that person, because like they're not even my type. It's not who I wanted, but you know, I did it because I wanted them to like me. So I definitely have some lists. I have journals of lists made up.
I think another, symptom of of one of these styles is like the people pleasing.
People, yeah,
Right?
big time,
People
big time.
pleasing because you want to be liked, just like you said, right? Like being liked by others, validated by others, recognized, being seen by others. You know, I
Mhm.
definitely struggled with all of that. Like I wanted others to see me, to recognize me, to, you know, to know how amazing I am, to know that I can come in and firefight and solve everybody's problems, right? Like, and it's interesting, like as I've gone on this journey, like one of my big changes has been that like I don't need to change anybody. I don't need to
Yeah,
change anybody. I don't need to fix anybody. Nobody is broken. I don't need to be helicopter parenting anybody. I don't need to be micromanaging their growth. I don't need to be Mother Teresa and save their life. You know, like
right.
it's always like that lifesaver. And I think that it's because as a child, like I really knew how to make sure that there was peace in the home, you know, especially a kid that goes through like trauma or goes through anything like that in the home where there is arguing, where there is fighting. I definitely learned how to like make sure that there was peace in the home, people weren't angry. I was like always the mediator, you know, between people in my home. And so like for anybody like that, you know, you learn how to like adjust to other people's energy, to other people's anger, you know, how to like, right? So how to maneuver situations. And so for people that underwent something like that, you know, you don't need to like, you know, so anyways, I just kind of wanted to point that out because that was like one of the things that I went through a lot in my transformation journey. I also, you know, became empowered to feel that I too have a voice. I have a voice. I have an opinion. I think this is where like boundaries and communication comes in.
Yeah,
You know what is the saddest part? And again, like regret can really be a big part of this journey too, right? But I try not to live in regret and I'm trying to live more in the now. But my regret is that I didn't know what my opinion was. You know that movie, the wedding with Richard Gere and Julia Roberts,
the which one? Like the run, they're
The
gonna
Runaway Bride,
Runaway Bride, right?
Runaway
Okay,
Bride. And
yeah.
do you remember when he's like, "What kind of eggs do you like? What kind of eggs does she like?" And every single ex-boyfriend had a different egg style.
Yes.
And
Oh,
it was the egg style that was the ex-boyfriend's egg style, right? And it was so sad because she didn't even know what her egg style was, right? She didn't know her own self. She
yeah.
didn't know her own opinion. And it is in their separation that she goes on that self-discovery journey and really steps into her power and figures out that she wants to pursue lights, that she, you know. And when I was watching that movie, it's interesting. I saw it not long ago. I sat and I like laughed and cried simultaneously during that scene because it was like that was me. I didn't know my ex style. I didn't know my opinion. I didn't know my voice. I didn't know me,
It's a good
you
movie.
know? Like I think about that often. So know your egg style, know
Yeah.
your opinion of
Yeah,
you.
that's
What do you believe in? What do you think? How do you feel? And voice it. It's okay.
yeah, it made me think, Vicky, I did have to go through like a single. I was just single, you know, for a while. And it's because I had to nourish the relationship with me.
Mhm.
So you can't really do that when there's other people in the dynamic very easily. You can, but there's often interference of energy and, you know, and other things. And the other thing that I learned is that not to lose myself in a relationship. So I had to make sure that I was stable and that I was grounded and that I had learned how to nurture the relationship with myself and not abandon me for any reason ever, because sometimes we just drop the habits, right? It's like, okay, I figured myself out. Let me just go back to what I was doing. Which brings in some of what I experienced is that I was terrified to date a different type of person because I found such familiarity in the known. I almost preferred that, right? So it's like, I know who I'm going to deal with. I know what the struggles are going to be. I know what the challenges are going to be. I know what type of attitudes I have to deal with. And it's actually so sad when you get the courage to go outside of that box and experience something that you've never experienced before, um because it's unknown. You're afraid of it because it's unknown, but that's actually why it's so much better than what you were doing, right? So that was something that terrified me. But one of the things that I did while I was single is I stopped taking crap from myself, and I'll throw this out there now because it's a good time, is that if you go to my website, lauraperry.com, in my store, there's the self-love card deck and it's $0. It's up in my store for free. If you download that, there's cards that can help you because it's exactly what I needed to learn to nourish the relationship with myself. Now, if you're in a relationship, you can still do it. But if you're single, it's a really good time to start taking yourself out on dates. That's one of the things that I recommend. And that's in the card deck, is date yourself. You guys, like, I had never done anything nice for myself. I was always like Vicky, being the one that created the peace. I was never the one that got any of the rewards. I was just like, everything is okay. I'm doing my job. And then when I turned the spotlight on myself, I was like, okay, what do I like to do? I don't know. Where do I like to go? I don't know. And then I decided that I was just going to marry me first, marry myself, whatever that meant. It meant communication. It meant staying by my side. It meant nourishing the relationship with myself. And I actually wrote down that the journey to self, what this topic reminds me of, is the journey through self-discovery of ourselves. And this toxic relationship pattern is just like one of the many steps, right, that we take through the journey to self. But I also wanted to touch upon a little bit was the acceptance and validation, because I did that too. That was almost like we're taught that, I think Chrissy and Vicky both touched upon it, is that we're taught that love is outside of us. Our childhood taught us that the acceptance, the validation, the anything good is actually outside of us and another person. And in order for us to access that, we people please, and we jump through hoops for other people, and we let them walk all over us. And what I learned is how to flip that energy around and send it to myself and find it within me. Because when you do that, it's unshakable. You can't lose it. It can't be taken away from you ever. So all of that is the relationship with yourself, and you can do that in any relationship. I have found that when you're in a toxic relationship, it's really hard to heal in the same environment that made you sick. So in my experience, I had to leave the, toxic relationships in order to give myself a fair chance. So it's probably possible. I just don't know anybody that's done it. So
I think
that's
it's
my
hard.
2 cents.
I think
Yeah,
it's
I think,
hard. And I love what you said about dating yourself. I know we're almost all the time, but I actually date myself all the time. Like, I take myself places all the time. Like, I could take myself to dinner all the time. Like, these people in these rrestaurants in Athens, they are getting to know me very well because I go there a lot. Like, I'm just gonna go
yeah,
here, and I'm just gonna
yeah.
I know the waitresses and the cooks, and like I talk to them, and I'm just like, hey, like,
Yeah, you guys, I had never been on a hike by myself. I
uh-huh.
had been on a walk, but I had never been to a movie by myself. I had never eaten at a restaurant by myself. I never just bought flowers for me because I like them, and now, yeah, I buy myself flowers all the time. And
I
honestly,
do
I don't
too.
care. Yeah, I don't care if anybody else does. I'm like, this is something that I give for me. And yeah, it really just the dating yourself and just marrying yourself, because you are in a relationship with this person, which is you. And you're, at the end of the day, that's who you spend the most of your time with, is you. So when you find that not only the nourishment in the relationship, but what are your needs? Like, Laura, what are my needs? What are my boundaries? What do I like? What do I dislike? That self revealing is such an empowerment. I don't, I would be a mess without that, I tell you. And I was. It's actually kind of comical at how much of a disaster that I was. Looking back, I'm like, healing is totally possible for everybody. If I got through what I went through,
It
it's
sounds
Oh,
like
trust
we were
me.
all it sounds like we were all kind of a disaster in our own ways. I mean, honestly, like us three, like people pleasing and like, you know what I mean? Like doing all the
You know,
things.
the other thing that I wanted to say is like for anybody who is a parent or who feels like, you know, like I'll give you an example, right? If there's a class that would come up and it would be like $1,000 a month for my children, I
Mhm.
wouldn't even think twice about doing it for them.
Yeah.
Like I'd be like, yeah, like whatever, like as long as they like it and makes them happy, like sign me up. I will sign on the dotted line for my children, right? Anything. The moment that there would be a class for me, I'd be like, well, can I find it for $50 less? Or like, you know, I would always somehow skimp on myself and would want to do something for like others. And one of the changes that I've gone through is I'm like, you know what? I'm kind of worth taking the class that I want to take, or like I'm worth buying, like, you know, like my daughters, they like to go to like really nice clothing stores. Like, I'll give you an example, like Lululemon, they'll go to Lululemon and they get all of these outfits. And I'm like, oh my God. Meanwhile, I'm like, looking for anything on discount for myself, right? And I'm like, well, is there I'll go to, I will like literally go to my sale rack. And God bless my 14-year-old daughter. She was like, Mommy, why are you looking at the sale rack? Like, seriously. She like took me and walked me over to the non-sale rack. I was like hyperventilating inside. And then she was like, why wouldn't you spend on yourself? And I thought about that and I'm like, she's so right. Like, again, I'm like, I'm not making myself as important as my kids, at least. Do you know what I mean? Like, everybody else was more important. So, again, like dating yourself, marrying yourself, romancing yourself, spoiling yourself, you know, treating yourself just as well as you treat another human being that you genuinely love and care for. How would you talk to them? How would you treat them? Treat yourself the same way. That's like one of the things that like is happening for me, like in the last 6 months, is like, oh, I need to learn to spoil myself the same way I spoil my children. Cause like I adore my kids. Like I would do anything for them, you know?
Yeah.
I
And
still gotta work on that one.
you know what though, you guys, Vicky, when you say this, you know what? Because I did learn this. I did learn what you learned and I went through what you went through. I transformed from the inside out. I tell you guys, I was like probably 20 pounds overweight. Well, probably more than that. If you look at pictures of me, you're like, that is not you. I'm like, yeah, that's me. I looked older. Um, there was a time in my life where my personality was magnetic and I was just light and floaty, and everybody was like, oh, wanting to hang out with me because I was just like super positive. But that ended when I was like in my like 25, 35 range. And then I wasn't like a negative person, but like people weren't magnetizing to me anymore. And after I learned how to like truly love myself and put myself first, everybody is like, I want that. I want that. And it really is like this transformation from the inside out. Like it changes the way that you look. It changes the way that you carry yourself. It changes your energy. People feel differently when you walk in a room about you because you feel good about yourself. And the interesting thing about that when it comes to thoughts is that how we feel about ourselves is contagious. So thoughts are floating within the ether, right? And so you got to be really careful how you feel about yourself because other people will just tune into those thoughts too, whether it's conscious or not. So when we feel really good about ourselves, everybody else is like, wow, that's a really amazing person. They'll think that too, just because we do, and we're carrying that energy. So there's so many benefits to just nourishing and deepening the relationship with yourself and just doing some of the things that we've talked about because it changes your physical appearance like crazy. You're energetic, you're spiritual, everything about you just transforms. And that's why we talk about transformation a lot here in this and the journey to self, is because we love transformation.
one last tip I'll give, that this is something I'm doing. So I'm not saying anybody else has to, but this is something that I've started to do. So I've started fasting, intermittent fasting. I've been doing it for a couple of weeks now, and I'm really feeling very different. And I literally just don't eat from like 8 or 9 o'clock at night until 11 a.m. or 12 p.m. the next day.
Okay.
I am like, huh?
I was just gonna ask how you're doing it. So you just like, so from like nighttime to like lunch, because I've tried a little bit, but I just didn't really know how to do it. It's like I want to. So
I'm gonna send you an awesome podcast that I listened to about it.
okay.
And I feel like it's literally changing my energy. I can't explain it. Oh, someone is writing. Yeah. Oh, is that you, Chrissy? Or
No, not me.
oh, okay. I'm not sure who that is.
Is someone writing?
Yeah, someone is rating on my YouTube channel. I like to see it like a cleanse. Yeah, exactly. So, but I've started doing it in the last, I've started doing it in the last 3 to 4 weeks, literally transforming me inside out. And I find it fascinating the way how less is truly more in your life. So for example, I've started decluttering my house now. I am a lot more focused. I've started my meditation course. Like, do you know how long I've been sitting on that meditation course now? If I tell you 6 or 9 months, it's been 6 or 9 months. I've had this idea of the mindfulness course with the binaural beats. I've been thinking about this for 9 months. Finally got myself to sit down and put together the outline. The intermittent fasting, it literally just changes your energy. Maybe like one day we can talk about this when we do a little bit more research. But I don't know, Laura, if you know anything about it.
Yeah,
I'm
well, so
literally
little
feeling
bit.
differently.
Yeah, so funny enough is that when I got really sick, I got really sensitive to every food. And I had been eating like I've been sensitive my whole life. I was eating like crap for like 5 years and it caught up with me. And my mom was actually surprised it took that long because I was always like a hypersensitive child. So what I did is I removed everything from my diet and I started with like an apple and I'd eat nothing but but apples for 3 days and make sure that I didn't react to them. And then I'd add an orange and then I'd add broccoli or whatever. And so I slowly added on. So honestly, you guys, I can't eat a lot of foods to this day. I don't do dairy. I don't do meat. I don't do gluten. There are some things that I just cannot tolerate because my body doesn't like the heaviness anymore. But one thing that I noticed happened supernaturally is that I stopped eating at about 4:30 p.m. every single day. And I didn't start until like, 9 or 10 in the morning. And I didn't realize that I had been fasting, like what everybody
Yeah.
talks about for
Yeah.
years. And it did, it healed me. It healed my body. And I still, to this day, I can't eat past like 5 o'clock very well. I'll just get like a stomach ache. But what I feel like happens is that a lot of the energy that goes towards digesting the food is actually redirected because it takes a lot of energy to actually digest foods, like a ton, like you would be surprised.
Mhm.
So I feel like that energy is just being applied in other areas of your life and you get clarity of mind too because there's so much toxins in our food that not only are we putting a lot of pressure on the digestion, we're sending a lot of toxins through our whole body. It just, inflammation happens every time you eat. So, like almost no matter what it is, but with the toxins in our foods these days, it happens in the whole body and in the brain as well. So when you're fasting, it gives your body a chance to recalibrate and rebalance and you just have this incredible clarity. Incredible. I do the same thing kind of naturally. Every once in a while I'll get home from the academy like really late and I'm just starving because I haven't eaten all day and when I eat I'm just like I just feel terrible like the rest of the night and then the next day when I eat that late. So it's just I think it's the natural body or the body's natural rhythm But yeah, I'd love to like actually do some research and maybe do
Yeah.
a fast or a talk about that. Because I did hear that whenever you're lacking clarity in your life, just start fasting. And I'm
Totally.
like, I resonate with that.
Yeah.
That sounds
Or,
really
or
similar.
or take away things from your life, create spaciousness in your
Mhm.
life somehow. So I was like, okay, so how can I create spaciousness in my life? I'm like, I can't do any less because I have to do everything I'm doing. So I'm like, maybe I'll eat less. When I started eating less, that kind of gave me the clarity and the focus to, declutter my clothes. I threw out 75% of my clothing, not threw out, donated.
Wow.
75% of my clothing. My kids were like, Mommy, what are you doing? You can sell it on Poshmark. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to donate it. Whoever needs it is going to find it. I don't need it. And, I'd rather give it to somebody who can use it, like all this corporate wear that I'm like never going to wear again. I was in the office today until 12 or 1 o'clock. And meetings kept going and going. I like was literally living on water. And I was fine on cup of water and cup of coffee and water. And I didn't even notice it. And I was like, oh my God, it's 1. I really need
Yeah.
to eat something. But I felt I'm feeling great. So somehow it's interesting, like creating that spaciousness in your body, and like, I don't know, in your home is incredibly wonderful.
I did it once but I did it for like a whole 24 hours. I've done it a couple times on a Friday, like for a whole 24 hours, which was a little like I was pretty good that like the next morning I woke up starving. So I felt like 24 hours. So I have wanted to do the intermittent because I felt like 24 hours was a little long for me. Some people do it and they're great with it, but I did have clarity. Like it did. I made a bunch of videos. I was getting all of these downloads. Like it definitely, so yeah, I think it would definitely be something to do some more research on and talk about for sure.
Okay. So I'm sorry, we totally digressed.
We
And I
totally did.
apologize as always. But does anybody have any questions? Can we answer anything for anyone? So for
I have a
those,
question.
yeah, go ahead.
Chrissy is a really good expert in this area. So, Chrissy, I just want to ask, how can people get a hold of you if they maybe need advice or can reach out to you if they're going through like a toxic relationship or have questions about these attachment um, issues that you've talked about? How can they find you?
The best way, honestly, where I'm is either TikTok or Facebook at this point in time. So my Facebook is Chrissy Lax. I'm typing it in here.
Did you put that in? Hold on.
Is that CHRISSY and then your last name is LAX?
LAX, there it is. And I'm the
For those
only
of you on the
I should be the
audience.
only one who shows up on Facebook. And then I think my TikTok, hold on, let me double check because I just changed my username because I didn't like it. Well, oh no. Okay, my TikTok wouldn't let me change my username. Maybe it's like the universe telling me something. So
What's your TikTok?
okay, I'm typing it in. It's at Soul Connections 11. I tried to change it today because I don't like it and it won't let me.
At Soul Connections. Okay. I'm putting it in the chat as well on the
Okay.
YouTube channel. Yes.
Those are just the easiest ways for people to message me and stuff because as these girls know, I've had a lot of trouble with technology. I'm trying to do other shit. I just cannot
We're soothing her. We're soothing her. You're getting through it.
Speaking of which, so Christy and I are going to do a TikTok live tomorrow on Thursday, 8:30 East Coast time. I'm so excited. We're going to focus on relationships.
So Vicky, should you put your TikTok in here? Put your TikTok in here so people can find us.
I don't even know what my TikTok is.
I got it. Hold on, I'll find it.
Yeah. So while Chrissy's doing that, while Chris is doing that for Vicky to find out how they can connect with you tomorrow, Vicky, I know that you had done because a lot of this relationship stuff evolves around self-love for ourselves. So I know that we had talked about in a previous live that you had put together some journal prompts for people. Where could they find those?
They can find them.
Are they on your website?
They're on my website.
Are they on your website?
Okay. This is Vicky's TikTok right here. I just put it in there.
I'm laughing. When Chrissy.
Okay.
Message
At-
today.
At
At
Vicky.D1.
Vicky.D1.
That
Yes,
is
hold on.
that is Vicky's TikTok.
So
Okay.
Vicky is a TikTok. Thank you. Is at
One of us
Vicky.
knows.
And remember, you guys, while they're figuring all this out, we want to make sure that we give you tools and tangible things that you can do and apply on my website, lauraperry.com, LORAPERRY.com. Go to the store and download your free self-love card deck. It's all digital. There's like 30 or more things that you can start doing immediately to start applying self-love to yourself and improve your quality of relationship with yourself.
I'm totally downloading the card deck.
Yeah.
That sounds amazing. And I think that that card deck is good for whether you're in a relationship or not, because you're always in a relationship with yourself
Mm-hmm.
first and foremost. Everything else is just gravy and sprinkles and a mirror of who you are being on the inside. So I
Exactly.
think that card deck is a brilliant tool for
Mhm.
anybody on this journey. So highly, highly recommended. I also put it into the YouTube. So www.lauraperry.com. Amazing stuff. So a replay of this live is going to be on the YouTube channel. So that's absolutely, we'll also send emails out following up with the URL to the replay. So that too is going to be available. And tomorrow night, Christine
Join us
is gonna be
tomorrow
in the
night.
house on TikTok talking about self-love. Laura, you're welcome to join us if you're up to it and up for it.
What time do you guys join on tomorrow night? Because
The same. It's 8:30.
it's 8:30, so 5:30 my time. I might be able to. I'll let you know, because I do
Okay.
teach at 6:30, but I have that hour, so might
Okay.
work.
Yeah, well, we'll
Yep.
be hanging out. I've never done a TikTok live, so
I haven't either, so I'm like, I don't
This
even
is
know what
Christy
buttons to
started
push,
doing
y'all.
them, and so we figured out she can invite me to join. We have tested it out, so she can invite me to join as a guest, and we're gonna try this out, folks. So super excited. Sorry, my dog's barking, but
No, I think this is an example of three people. We're all figuring it out. We're
Mhm.
figuring it out, right? So that's the point, is that we're all in this together. It's this one unified human experience that we're all having, right? And we're all figuring out this journey, figuring out lives, figuring out, how things work, and it's interesting. You could be an expert in one aspect of your life and be figuring stuff out in a completely other expert, aspect of your life. Like this morning, I was running a giant team. At night, I'm like, my website is down. I don't know how to bring it back up. That's why I started laughing.
I don't know how to
Oh.
make the website when I'm trying to figure it out. But I could through a day, I could be a nurse all day long, and I can talk about relationships all day long. But technology, we're still working on that aspect, folks. So
No, technology is our friend.
it
Technology
is our
is
friend. It's our
and
friend. It's our friend.
because of technology, I'm so grateful for technology. Because of our technology, we're able to reach
Yes.
people throughout the world who write us, who tell us like what a difference we're making for them. And we're so grateful for each and every one of you who comes, who shows up, who participates, who listens. It doesn't matter. You're showing up, you're raising your hand, you're telling the universe that you want something different. Hey, you're basically going like this to the universe. Guide me to what is of the highest good for me. Guide me to what it is that I want. And so we so appreciate you being here. We're coming back next Wednesday. We're not going anywhere. And we're so looking forward to our next next week's topic. So, all right.
Yeah, that's a wrap. Thank
That's
you
a
everyone for
wrap.
joining us. We'll see you
Bye.
next week.
Love you
Okay.
guys.
Love you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.